Hey there, YouTube. Today I'm bringing you a cubic deck profile. I came in first with this today at Locals. It was, I believe, a 20... It was either a 21 or a 23 person event. Um, so there have been a lot of cubic lists topping, and I decided that I was going to try and do the same, and lo and behold, we managed to win out the day. So to start off, we have 3 Duza, the Meteor Cubic Vessel. On summon, he is a Foolish for any cubic card, and during the turn that a monster was sent to grave, he can gain 200 for every monster in your grave with a different name. So he's our best card in the deck. He's the starter. He's an extender. Sometimes he's just a beefy monster if you need him to be. He's just all around arguably the best card in the deck. The other card that is arguably the best is Crimson Nova, the Dark Cubic Lord. He's our boss monster. We summon him by revealing 3 cubics with different names. This can include another copy of himself. This effect does not activate, so you can special summon it even if somehow you're locked out of activating effects. He's unaffected by the activated effects of monsters with an original attack points of 3,000 or less. If he destroys a monster by battle, he can attack again, and he's a mandatory effect in the end phase to deal 3,000 to both players. Next, we've got 1 Vijam the Cubic Seed. This is probably one of the weirder choices, but it's common in this version of the deck. He's really only used for another name, but he's also a good level 1. He's for like Linkuriboh and Anima. He also does allow us to stall because he can't be destroyed by battle, and then at the end of the damage step, if he battled, he can move himself to the spell trap zone as a continuous spell and place a cubic counter. And theme you'll notice is that cubic counters, they negate the effects of the monsters that they're on, as well as prevent them from attacking. So he's a good out to things like Borrelsword if you have like a Dharma on field so you don't take damage. Next, we have 1 Buster Gundil. This card is honestly insane. If you were easier to summon, you definitely play more. You can special summon him by sending 3 cubics you control to the grave. Monsters, specifically, sadly. He gains, if summoned that way, he gains 3,000 attack points. He can attack 3 times, and if this card in your possession is sent to the grave by an opponent's card, battle, or effect, he can target up to 3 cubics in your grave and special summon them, and then add a cubic card from your deck or your graveyard to your hand. And that's not once per turn on that effect. And then next we've got 1 Giragail. This is kind of a main deck cowboy. You summon it by sending 1, and it burns for 800 as a mandatory effect when it's summoned from the hand. Its other effect doesn't matter because we're not playing the Vulcan Dragny, but if it did, it could summon 2 Vijams from grave to search a Vulcan Dragny. Next, we're running 1 Eldritch. We will get to the reason why we only have 1 later. And then, honestly, what was the MVP of the day was the 1 of Pinkertops. It's just a good all-around going second card, and I needed a 40th card to put in, so this is just what we went with. Then on to spells, we run 3 Cubic Dharma. This is a discard outlet for your cubic spells or monsters occasionally. It says discard a cubic card, draw a card. You can banish it from your grave to target a cubic monster in your grave and add it to your hand. And you take no battle damage from attacks involving cubic monsters. Granted, you can only use its discard effect and its graveyard effect once per turn, but that's fine. Then we've got 3 Cubic Karma starting out. You can activate it and target a monster you control. Send Vijams to the grave, as many from hand or deck as you want, and increase that monster's attack by 800 per. Then, if a Vijam is summoned by the effect of a cubic, say Buster Gundil, during your opponent's turn, you can send this to the grave and have their life points. And you can banish it from the grave to search a cubic monster, and that effect is not once per turn, so this is the other contender for the best card in the deck, but it is definitely worse than Duza. It's actually what you usually send off of Duza a lot of the time. Then we've got 3 Cubic Wave. This is an insane card. It can negate entire boards sometimes. It's good for OTKing. So you can target a cubic you control and a monster your opponent controls, double the attack of yours, and then have theirs. So say even if you negate, or even if you target like an Ultimate Falcon with it that's unaffected, your cubic monster still gets the double attack even if theirs doesn't get halved. It can banish itself and any number of cubic monsters from the grave to target monsters your opponent controls and put cubic counters on them, which, like I said earlier, negate the effects and prevent attacking. All around, this card needs to be at 3 right now, in my opinion, just because sometimes this deck has trouble dealing with negates, and that's just an easy way to do it. Next, we've got Foolish Burial Goods. This is just to send our cubic spells and traps to the grave, because all of them have graveyard effects. And it's a good extender. It can be a starter if you need it to by sending the Karma to search like a Duza, things like that. Then next, we're playing one Reasoning, because it gets a lot of cards in the graveyard usually. That's actually why we're playing so few normal summons. We've got 5 monsters that can be normal summoned, counting the... or 6, apologies. Counting the Pinkertops and the Eldritch. So the ones we're usually going to summon are like Vijam or Duza. Duza is preferable. So we're not very likely to hit a monster, so we usually get to mill a lot of cards. Then we have the same general idea with the Monster Gate. We just like to get a lot of cards in the grave. So we play very few normal summons. Same thing. This one we actually have a really neat interaction with Duza. I'll get to that later. We'll also link in the description a how to play Cubics in-depth tutorial by one of our friends over in the Cubic Discord, which we'll also have the link to. Then we've got 3 Cursed Eldlands. This is why we play the one Eldritch. You can search it, and Eldritch helps get your cubic spells and traps out of hand because they can be bricks sometimes. And it's also makes it so that way we don't have to play more than one copy of it because it's easily searchable and then can just help you win the game. Then we've got 3 Super Polys. This comes up mostly to help you break boards. Sometimes it can be interruption. And sometimes it even helps you just OTK. Like earlier I had a game where that could have happened. We've got 1 Harpy's Feather Duster because this deck doesn't have that great of a back row matchup, so we just want to have the blowout if we can. We've got 1 Instant Fusion because it summons like a Mud Dragon if we don't want our stuff to be targeted, or a Millenniumize if we're trying to play around hand traps. All around pretty good card. Hell, it could even summon a window sometimes, I guess. Then we're playing 1 Mind Control. We do have a Zeus in the extra deck. This is usually used for that, but sometimes it also is just there to get you into a play if you don't open a normal summon. Then we've got the 1 Called by the Grave, just to play through hand traps. It's not necessary, but I figured I'd run it today, and it actually came up as more interruption than it did as protection. Then onto the traps, we have 3 Unification of the Dark Cubic Lords. This is a fusion trap for the deck, but you use it for its second effect more often. It says, if a cubic monster is destroyed by battle or leaves the field, you can banish it to special summon a level 4 or lower cubic, ignoring summoning conditions. So you can summon, say, your Buster Gundil or another Duza. And the turn that that's used, the monster that you summon can't be destroyed by battle or effect. So it's really good for just making a near immortal cubic that can get you resources or that gets you back into the game in general, really. Moving on to the extra deck. Today I played a bunch of Super Poly targets. We have these 4. The Invoked Elysium didn't come up today because I didn't face any Invoked, but it was the idea was that we would do it against Invoked Shaddoll or Pure Invoked, things like that, because it's just a blowout versus that deck. Activate Super Poly, we clear their board, and this can help clear things later. Starving Venom we have for Dragon Link because we get rid of darks that they leave on the field, or we can normal summon our own dark, or a special summon Crimson Nova, something like that. Window is for the Shaddoll matchup because this deck actually does have a fairly bad Shaddoll matchup outside of the fact it doesn't need to deal with the window. But this is just an easy way to do it. We can do this like at the end of our combo, or if they schism something, we at least still have a play with the window. And then Mud Dragon is usually used in the same instances that Starving Venom is, except sometimes there's not always 2 darks, there's 2 lights that are different types. Like earlier I summoned it using my own Duza and my Eldritch to OTK. And then we've got the 1 Millenniumize, it's an instant fusion target, plays through interaction. Next, I've got the 1 Zeus and the 1 Abyss Dweller. These are my only 2 Xyzes. I only ran the Zeus today because I wanted it for the Zodiac matchup. I wanted to be able to mind control one of their monsters and then make like Dweller punch and then put my Zeus on top of theirs or something like that. And the Abyss Dweller came up a lot today, actually. It was probably the 2nd most used card in the extra deck today, behind some of the links. One of the links in particular. It's really easy to make in this deck because despite the fact we only have 4 level 4s in the deck. It's not hard to get 2 of them on the field at the same time. The only time I actually wound up summoning the Zeus today was in a game after the tournament, and I actually lost that one because I misplayed, because I forgot that Starving Venom could copy an effect, and that would have let me force a negate that I couldn't deal with later. Then we've got our links. We've got 1 access code. This is our best OTK enabler outside of the main archetype. We've got 1 Zeraboros. Honestly, you can cut this. You only need to play 1 of these, and I'd opt for the access code. Usually, this would be my spot where I'd run Crusadia Equimax, but I didn't have time to find it before the tournament started. Then we've got the 1 Nightmare Unicorn and the Nightmare Phoenix. These are board breakers, as well as they assist us in link climbing, which is something that we can do with Duza and Unification. I'll give a brief show on that later. We've got the 1 IP Masquerena, just so that way we can make it and have interaction on our opponent's turn, or we can make it on our turn and link into like a unicorn or something, so that way whatever we summon can't be destroyed by card effect, because sometimes that comes up a lot. Then we've got 1 Verte Anaconda. We use this exclusively for Super Poly. I think it came up 3 times today out of the 5 rounds. It came up against, I think the only matchup it really won on its own was the Drytron matchup, because I was able to use this and get rid of his Linkuriboh and the Verte to make a Starving Venom, and that was just enough for me to beat over him and punch for game. Then we've got the 1 Linkuriboh and the 1 Anima. Sometimes we want to summon one, sometimes we want to summon the other. The Linkuriboh is mostly here for the Dino matchup, which is already bad for us. The Anima is usually what we go into, or usually what I go into, using the Vijam. I did find today that since I didn't play against a lot of Dino, I summoned them both about the same amount, depending on what the scenario was. And then the side deck is always personal choice. Today I chose to play 3 Lancia, 3 Ash. In hindsight, this should have been Droll. I might have actually sided it then. 3 Nibiru, 3 Dark Rulers. I only played Dark Ruler because there were some boards that people at our shop make that I was kind of scared of, but I never actually sided any of these cards in. They were all just there as like contingencies just in case. But the issue is with Monster Gate and Reasoning, we don't want to have monsters that can be normal summoned in the deck, so siding these 9 in would have meant that I would have had to side out the Monster Gate and Reasoning, or at least it would have severely lowered my chances of a good mill off of the Monster Gate and Reasoning. And then the Dark Rulers should be some other blowout card that doesn't restrict us from killing our opponent, because this deck is designed to blind second OTK. Droplets would be a much better alternative, since graveyard cards and stuff like that. But Dark Ruler, for what it's worth, I guess is alright in this deck. Honestly, just play Twin Twisters or Droplets, though. And then the only card I actually did side in today were the 3 Ice Dragon's Prison. I sided this every time I went first, because it came up in pretty much every matchup. I think the only time I didn't side this in was against Drytron, and that's just because I knew they were going to make me go second anyway, so there wasn't a point in siding it in. And now, to show the loop that I was talking about with Duza and Unification, Duza plus any extender, so say Giragaile. Anything that makes cubic Duza leave the field, right? So say you open Duza Giragaile, you normal summon Duza, you use its effect to send the Unification, and then you send the Duza to summon the Giragaile, and the Unification summons another Duza from the deck after the Giragaile deals 800.
So you chain block it.
So you you can't chain block this. You have to do Giragaile's Chain Link 1 since it's mandatory, but it just means that you can put 2 monsters on the field every time, and then you just send another Unification, you go up into a bigger link, rinse, repeat. Duza and Unification, neither one of them are once per turn, so you're just able to climb up to a link 4 off of Duza plus any extender, and most of the time it's going to be a 3-pop access code fairly easily. Anyway, that's all for the deck. If you would like to see us play this and other things, and possibly force me to play things I don't know how to, check us out on twitch.tv/teamclb_YGO. A link to that will be in the description and maybe in the info cards if I can figure out how they work. Anyway, with that, have a good one, chat.